North Korea test-fired multiple short-range ballistic missiles toward the East Sea this morning, which coincides with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to South Korea for the Summit for Democracy. The third Summit for Democracy kicked off today in Seoul, bringing together leaders from around the world to address pressing concerns about democratic values. President Yoon called for cooperation so that AI and new digital tools can serve to defend democracy. Russian President Vladimir Putin clinched his fifth term as the country's leader, as widely predicted, with no actual contender. Having won with an overwhelming lead, he warned NATO of World War III if there's any direct conflict. It's March 18, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We start with news of a fresh display of defiance by Pyongyang, which comes days after a joint military drill by Seoul and Washington, and coincides with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to South Korea for the Summit for Democracy. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
North Korea fired what is presumed to be multiple short-range ballistic missiles toward the East Sea Monday morning. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff detected several SRBMs at 7:44 a.m. launched toward the East Sea from the Pyongyang area. It appears that at least 3 ballistic missiles flew approximately 300 kilometers northeast. The flight distance from Pyongyang to South Korea's Gaeryongdae military headquarters is also approximately 300 kilometers. Japanese authorities said the missiles reached a maximum altitude of about 50 kilometers. Given this data, experts believe it is likely that the SRBMs were KN-25s, which have allegedly been exported to Russia. South Korea's military strongly condemned North Korea's missile launch as a provocation that seriously threatens peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. The JCS added that it has strengthened surveillance and vigilance in preparation for additional launches and is maintaining a full readiness posture by closely cooperating with U.S. and Japanese authorities. According to Professor Yang Mu-jin at the University of North Korean Studies, the North's provocation has been timed to correspond with U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken's arrival in Seoul to attend the Summit for Democracy.
Considering that the launch coincided with U.S. Secretary of State Blinken's visit to South Korea, I believe the North intended to display discomfort and put pressure on the U.S.
The launch comes over a month after North Korea fired multiple rounds of cruise missiles toward the East Sea. It's the second ballistic missile launch of the year, with the previous launch coming in January. Experts believe North Korea has remained rather low-key over the past few weeks in terms of threats and provocations, even during Seoul and Washington's Freedom Shield military exercise that wrapped up last week due to important political events in Russia and China. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The visiting U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken was quick to condemn North Korea's latest round of missile launch and reaffirm America's commitment as he met South Korean President Yoon and Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul today in Seoul. Our correspondent Kim Jong-sil has more.
A scheduled luncheon meeting between the top diplomats of Seoul and Washington came amid yet another provocative act by Pyongyang on Monday morning. Foreign Minister Cho and his U.S. counterpart, Secretary Blinken, condemned North Korea's launches of what appeared to be multiple short-range ballistic missiles ahead of the third Summit for Democracy taking place in Seoul. Seoul's foreign ministry released a statement saying that the top diplomats agreed that Pyongyang's continued threats would only enhance cooperation between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, as well as the international community against the North. It added Secretary Blinken reaffirmed America's unwavering defense commitment to the security of South Korea. Minister Cho said even though the North has defined inter-Korean relations as those between hostile enemy states and announced that it will no longer seek reunification with the South, Seoul will continue to aim for reunification that extends freedom and basic human rights to all. This is the third time that the top diplomats of the allies have met in just a month. Before his talks with the foreign minister, the Secretary of State had a brief meeting with President Yoon. There, Mr. Blinken said the U.S. will always stand with South Korea for a firm response to North Korean provocations and for peace and stability on the Korean peninsula by continuing to strengthen extended deterrence through close cooperation. 김정실, Arirang News.
So as we heard, the third Democracy Summit kicked off in Seoul this morning to address threats to democratic principles. It's the first time that the U.S.-initiated conference is being hosted independently by another country. There, President Yoon called to safeguard democracy from the double-edged sword of digital technology. Our presidential office correspondent Woo Soo-young has details.
South Korea, the United States and the United Kingdom have called for solidarity in defending democracy for future generations amid fast-evolving digital changes that threaten freedom, human rights and prosperity. This came at the opening ceremony of the Third Summit for Democracy, which kicked off in Seoul on Monday, gathering world leaders, civil society and the private sector under the theme of democracy for the future generation. In his speech, President Yoon said artificial intelligence and new digital tools pose a double-edged sword to societies and individuals, citing fake news and disinformation as major threats. He also warned against a growing digital divide between nations that would widen economic gaps and, in turn, increase the democracy divide. He called for efforts to ensure digital progress goes hand in hand with democracy.
개인의 자유와 창의를 북돋우는 활기찬 민주주의는 청년들의 역량과 기회를 확장하는 촉진제가 될 것이며 이를 통해 우리의 미래 세대는 민주주의에 대해 더욱 확고한 믿음을 갖게 될 것입니다.
This year's summit begins with a ministerial-level meeting co-hosted by the UK and Ecuador, followed by an expert roundtable to address cyber threats while fostering digital innovation in a way that respects human rights and freedom in online spaces. Deeming South Korea a champion of democracy, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken remarked on the significance of the country hosting the summit independently for the first time outside the United States. The Summit for Democracy was first launched in 2021 under the leadership of US President Joe Biden amid the worrying rise of autocratic leaders and authoritarian governance around the world. Blinken called for collective efforts for democratic renewal to sustain faith in democracy.
In many places, basic freedoms have eroded. Electoral rights have come under assault. Corruption has eaten away at hope. As authoritarian and repressive regimes deploy technologies to undermine democracy and human rights, we need to ensure that technology sustains and supports democratic values and norms.
UK Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowding called for a full-spectrum response to a full spectrum of threats.
Increased cyber defences, tackling mis- and disinformation, protections for candidates at home, and global consensus abroad. We will not be afraid to call out this malign activity wherever we see it.
The plenary session of world leaders will be held virtually on Wednesday evening's Seoul time, with President Yoon chairing the talk on technology, elections and fake news. Kenyan President William Ruto will lead the session on the Global South, and Danish leader Mette Frederiksen on inclusive society and youth empowerment. Woo Soo-young, Arirang News.
Over in Russia, President Vladimir Putin won a landslide in the country's election with no actual contender, cementing his already tight grip on power. In his victory speech, Putin warned NATO of World War III if there's any direct conflict. Chung Eun-ju tells us more.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has won a fifth term as the country's leader, following an election that's been widely criticized as lacking democratic legitimacy. Russia's Central Election Commission on Monday revealed that with 60% of the votes counted, Putin had an overwhelming lead with over 87% voting for the incumbent leader. Putin visited his party headquarters in Moscow on Sunday and called on Russia to become stronger and more effective, thanking the Russian people for voting.
Initially, I would like to thank Russian citizens. We are all one team. All Russian citizens who came to polling stations and voted.
The outcome means Putin, age 71, will be in office until 2030. If Putin completes the full term, he will overtake Joseph Stalin and become Russia's longest-serving leader in more than 200 years. Putin has had little to no challenge during his rule, with most opposition candidates either dead, jailed, or barred from running for office. In the face of Putin's predictable victory, Russia's opposition sought to put together a show of strength. Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of Alexei Navalny, said Sunday that she wrote her late husband's name on the ballot. Navalny supporters also held demonstrations at polling stations throughout Russia while voting for other candidates or invalidating votes. In his election victory address to the press in Moscow on Monday morning, Putin said that Russia's armed forces were advancing in Ukraine every day and that Moscow's forces held the initiative on the battlefield. He also said the presence of Western troops in Ukraine could push the world to the brink of World War III. When asked about the potential for a direct conflict with NATO, he said he did not think that anyone was interested in such a scenario. Putin also said Russia was ready for talks on a French proposal for a ceasefire in Ukraine during the Olympic Games, but would need to take Russia's interests on the front line into account. 정은주, Arirang News.
Drastic measures is what President Yoon says will be taken to tackle South Korea's rising grocery prices, especially fruit, by injecting 150 trillion Korean won, or about $112 million or more if need be. This as he hosted a policy review meeting today at a supermarket in Seoul.
먼저 농산물 가격이 평년 수준으로 안정될 때까지 기간, 품목, 규모에 제한을 두지 않고 납품 단가와 할인 지원을 전폭적으로 시행하겠습니다. 냉해 등으로 상당한 기간 동안 높은 가격이 예상되는 사과와 배는 더 파격적으로 지원하겠습니다.
Fruit prices in February surged more than 40% on year, which drove the overall inflation rate to 3.1%. Among the measures also include lowering tariffs on imported fruits, with items such as kiwis and cherries newly added to the list of benefiting items. During the discussion, the Deputy Prime Minister for Finance, Choi Sang-mok, along with the Agricultural and Seafood Ministers, briefed the president, while civil organizations such as a consumer organization voiced their concerns to the president and his aides. The collective action by Korea's medical arena began with its junior doctors walking out of hospitals, followed by medical students taking leaves of absence. And come next Monday, their professors are poised to resign en masse should the government fail to back down from its plan to expand medical school admissions quota. Our Kim Bo-kyung has the latest.
Junior doctors are not alone in deciding to walk away from their work sites. Professors at medical schools have also chosen to submit resignation letters starting next Monday, March 25th. Professors from 20 or half of South Korea's medical schools were present at a meeting late on Friday, with professors from 16 schools deciding overwhelmingly to resign. The 4 remaining schools are reportedly collecting opinions over whether and when to join in. Resignation submissions are set to start on the 25th, but dates could differ depending on each medical school's schedule. Professors from Seoul National University's medical school had previously decided to file resignations starting this Monday, but have decided to reschedule accordingly. The chief of the medical professors group strongly urged the government to back down from the plan to raise the enrollment quotas at med schools from 3,058 to 5,058 per year starting in 2025.
We desperately ask for a first step to be made to start discussions. We ask the government even more. Please let go of the figure of 2,000. Otherwise, we cannot start discussions at all.
To this, Health Minister Cho Tae-yul expressed serious concerns during a meeting at the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters held on Monday morning. While underlining that it is not acceptable to negotiate while holding people's lives hostage, the minister urged professors to work with the government so that trainee doctors could return to duties.
We should not negotiate over people's lives in any case. Please persuade trainee doctors and students who left hospitals and schools to return and participate in discussing reform tasks for the improvement of the healthcare system.
The minister said he would continue talks with directors not only from the 5 major hospitals, but also those at national hospitals. Those talks are slated for Monday and Tuesday. He also mentioned that intensive care units and emergency rooms would be closely monitored to prevent medical disruptions. As part of efforts to improve the healthcare system, the ministry announced additional reformative measures for the fee-for-service system. Also, regarding previous plans to inject some $7.5 billion for essential medical departments by 2028, it gave specific guidelines for compensation. $3.75 billion for surgical and internal medicine departments, and over $2 billion for pediatrics and childbirth. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
On the political front, Korea's 22nd general election is roughly 3 weeks away, and official registration is scheduled to start this Thursday. That being said, political parties are now finalizing their candidate rosters. Our correspondent Lee Si-hoo has this report.
The rival parties' candidate nomination procedures for April's general election are coming to a close. The ruling People Power Party nominated 3 more candidates on Sunday to wind up its official nominations. They have entered candidates in all of the 254 electoral districts in the country during a process that lasted more than a month. This is the first time in 16 years that the PPP has run in all districts. Of the 113 PPP members in the assembly as of February, 74 received official nominations. Their average age is around 58. The main opposition Democratic Party is also finishing up its nominations, finalizing candidates for 250 districts as of Monday. Of the 163 DP members of the assembly when the nomination process started, at least 64 members failed to receive official backing for a rerun. The average age of those nominated is around 57. On Sunday, the party held a special ceremony at the National Assembly, handing out certificates of nomination to its candidates.
Meanwhile, proportional representation candidates who aren't elected to represent a certain district but are elected based on voter support for their party of representation are also being listed.
The People Future Party, a satellite party created by the PPP, announced the final list of its 35 proportional representation nominees on Monday. The Democratic Alliance of Korea, a satellite party formed by the DP and other opposition parties, including the Progressive Party and the New Progressive Union, also has finalized a list of 30 nominees. The 2 main parties have not put forward any proportional representatives themselves, relying on their satellites to attract additional voters to earn more seats. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Time now to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. Joining us in the studio is our sports editor, Paul Neat. Hello, Paul.
Hello there.
Let's first start with baseball. MLB is in town because of the historic season opener this Wednesday. I understand that a Korean baseball legend will throw a first pitch.
Yes, you're quite right. It's Park Chan-ho, who in 1994 became the first South Korean ever to play in MLB. But yes, he'll throw the ceremonial first pitch this Wednesday when his former team, the Los Angeles Dodgers, take on the San Diego Padres at the Gochok Skydome in Seoul. The match will be the first proper MLB game to be played in South Korea. Now, tickets, of course, sold out very quickly, but baseball fans in the country have been able to watch some pre-season friendlies instead. The Dodgers beat the Kiwoom Heroes 14-3 on Sunday, but none of those runs were scored by Japanese star Shohei Ohtani, who was struck out at both of his at-bats. Also on Sunday, the San Diego Padres beat South Korea's national baseball team 1-0. The one run came following a wild pitch, but it was a game that saw Padres star Kim Ha-sung return to his old stomping ground, the Gochok Skydome, as his former team, the Kiwoom Heroes, play their home games there.
And moving on to badminton, a Korean win at the All England Open.
Yes, Iso and Baek Hana, they won the women's doubles title. In Birmingham, England on Sunday, Lee and Baek beat Chiharu Shida and Nami Matsuyama of Japan 2-1. This was Korea's second win in as many years at the All England Open, which is regarded as the world's oldest and most prestigious badminton competition. Korea won the first set 21-19, but then lost the second 21-11. The win was sealed with a 21-17 win in the final set. The pair lost in the final last year to fellow Koreans Kim So-young and Kong Hee-young, and the win was also something of revenge as Lee and Baek lost to Shida and Matsuyama in the French Open quarter-finals just last week.
And moving on to football, South Korea's men's team resumes its World Cup qualification this week. It looks like a few of the players are in good form for their clubs.
Yes, that's right. Quite a few goals over the weekend as well, including Lee Gang-in, who scored a beautifully struck left-footed curler into the top corner during Paris Saint-Germain's 6-2 away win over Montpellier on Sunday. His goal in the 53rd minute made it 5-2 for what was his fourth in all competitions for the French club. PSG sit top of the table, 12 points clear of Brest. Over in Serbia, Hwang In-bom scored his third goal of the season in Crvena Zvezda's 5-0 Superliga win on Sunday over Radnički to go 4 points clear at the top. Hwang got the game's fourth in the 68th minute to make it 4-0, turning home from close range. Meanwhile, Cho Gyu-song was also on target for FC Midtjylland, and Lee Jae-song got an assist for Mainz in Germany. This Thursday, all will likely be involved in Korea's World Cup qualifier with Thailand. It's the first match since the Asian Cup and first under caretaker manager Hwang Sun-hong.
And finally, to short track speed skating, outstanding performances by Korean skaters at the World Cup Championships in the Netherlands.
Yes, and perhaps you could say Kim Gil-lee was South Korea's standout performer. She won gold in the women's 1500 metres with a time of 2 minutes 21.192 seconds, just 0.2 seconds ahead of second place. It was also her first ever individual gold medal. She also won silver in the 1000 metres. Korea's other silver medal came in the men's 5,000 metre relay, and there could have been more, but Hwang Dae-hon and Park Ji-won both collided in the 1,000 metres and 1,500 metres.
All right, our sports editor, Pauline, thank you. See you next week.
Thank you. See you.
As a cold wind blew, the air cleaned up, but a late cold snap came around. The temperature in Seoul this morning dropped to 1.4 degrees Celsius, 7 degrees lower than yesterday. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start at 3 degrees. However, mild conditions will persist across the nation during the daytime. Seoul will see highs of 11 degrees for the daytime. As the daily highs rise, the daily temperature difference will widen further as well. Please take good care of your health. Currently, a dry weather advisory is in effect across the east. This will be relieved tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, with rain or snow falling all over the country. Heavy snow of up to 20 centimeters is forecast in the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province, so make sure you're prepared. Tomorrow, Chuncheon will start off at -1 degree Celsius, Gyeongju 4 degrees. Highs in Busan and Gwangju will move up to 15, Daejeon 12 degrees Celsius. The late cold snap is expected to continue until late in the week after the rain or snow stop. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.